I'm not the best anything, except for I'm the best at leading the team that I want to build. And so I subordinate my ego for the success of the team. I try to be a cheerleader for those folks.
Detailer's Roadmap Cruise Control, where we navigate the roadways of life, business, and everything in between. Hey guys, it's Kevin Davidson from the Cruise Control Podcast, brought to you by Detailer's Roadmap. I'm going to be here with my friend Larry Broughton, who is I've had an opportunity to spend some time with before. Super great guy, great leadership man, great entrepreneur, and someone that I've really leaned into for his guidance and his wisdom. And I see his content all over the place. If you're not following him, make sure you do that. And I hope that he's going to be here to do some awesome stuff for us. Actually, I know he is. Before we get started, wanted to remind you that Detailer's Roadmap builds awesome, kick-ass websites, as we say, and we do search engine optimization. So if that's you, you need that kind of service, please go up to detailersroadmap.com, click that little book a demo at the top of the page, and we will walk you through that process. So, hey, let me give Larry's awesome bio. Larry is an award-winning hotelier, which is always a hard word for me to say for some reason. Entrepreneur, CEO, best-selling author, keynote speaker, and former U.S. Army Green Beret. CBS News called Larry the nation's foremost expert on leadership and entrepreneurship, while the host of Travel Channel's hit show Hotel Impossible says he's among the top hospitality experts in the country. His upbeat, creative approach to business and life has been featured in newspaper, magazine articles across the country, and has been a recurring guest and expert on news and TV programs on pretty much every major television and cable network. Among his awards are Ernst & Young's Entrepreneur of the Year and Passkeys Foundation National Business Leader of Integrity. And if you want to learn more about him, we'll get this again later, but don't forget to go to the Larry Broughton, BROUGHTON.com. And that intro basically just says, hey, it's not really qualified to be here, but we'll talk to him anyway. Right? No, I mean, dude, this is awesome. I appreciate you being part of our little visionary series here, where I want to bring business leaders to an environment that I think a lot of people that are listening to this probably don't normally get to experience. So I really appreciate you being here.
Kevin, it is so great to see you again. I love what you're doing out there. I love your podcast. I love how you're helping folks lean into what I call their fullest potential. Because sometimes we just need that nudge. We need someone to cheer each other on. We need a connection sometimes. I don't know why more folks don't do what you do, but thanks for doing it, because at the end of the day, it's going to be folks like you and me and the folks listening to this podcast that are going to save our country's bacon. It is not going to be government, right? I'm sorry. Don't want to blow anyone's bubble, right? But more folks have been lifted out of poverty through entrepreneurship and capitalism than any other social program ever created. So for the folks that are listening here today, go get them.
Yeah, 100%.
Go get them. Yeah.
100%. Hey, one of the questions I always ask my guests on this particular podcast is this: we want your superhero backstory, right? Like all superheroes, in whatever arena that they run in, all have a backstory, and you can take as long as you want. Yeah. But I always like to set the foundation that this is the person we're talking to, not like, hey, I've done this, and I've hit these numbers, but like who you are. Yeah. Because I think that helps us understand how we can identify with you in order to do what you do. Yeah, that's such a great question. I wish more people would start relationships like this. There's a great YouTube video, and I'll lead into this. And I wish I could just give you the URL for the YouTube video, but it's basically Arnold Schwarzenegger talking about who do you want to be? Not what, who do you want to be? And like you said, it's not the awards, it's not the accolades, it's who are you? So who am I guess? Well, I'm a dad to start with. Okay. That is above and beyond anything else. And, when I was younger, before I was a father, I didn't think that was such a big deal. I mean, I'll be honest with you. Yeah. I had a father, of course, but like a lot of us, it wasn't a great relationship. I learned now that he had just a different teaching style than I have. I learned from him by watching him, right? But I'd realized once I became a father how important love is. I know that that's nutty. I know a lot of people don't get it. Yes, I was married, but I really felt like love at that time before I had my daughter was this zero-sum game.
Like if I love my dog this much and I love my wife this much, I've only got this much left for my child. And I just didn't know. Right. And so I approached life just a lot differently, that I really try to just love people. And that includes my team members, that includes investors, that includes my clients. And so that whole thing comes from, again, we're talking about being real, we talk about my hero story. If you think about Joseph Campbell's, hero's journey, I was a broken, wounded young person. I was a broken, wounded teenager. I was a broken, wounded young adult. I was broken and wounded before I went into the Green Berets, And I thought that's how life was supposed to be. But it was from that brokenness and that wounding, once I started kind of realizing that I do have influence in some spaces, and really starting to look inward. And that was a lot of the help from my former spouse. It didn't always come across sunshine, lollipops, and rainbows, but it was like, get your act together, brother. You need a therapist. I love her. I really do. She's happily married, and we get along great. But had it not been for that pushing, I never would have had to turn inward and say, okay, God has gifted me with all these opportunities in my life. What are you going to do with all of that? And so I was in Boy Scouts. That's really where I started to learn about leadership stuff, and all the different styles of leadership. And that's not just one style, and you don't need to copy someone else's style to be an effective leader. And it's really about, getting the best out of the folks that are in your charge. These aren't minions of yours. We're supposed to be serving them, So, but there are times when you must be an autocratic, command and control type of leader. But then there's other times you have to be more of an ally or friend type of thing. So it's during those youthful years that I learned this stuff in Boy Scouts, and then as a co-captain of my wrestling team and that type of thing. But then getting into the Green Berets, that flipped my world, realizing the power of these small elite teams, 12 guys. You can go in and you can topple a country, when you're all subscribed to the same vision, when you're all subordinating your personal agenda for the success of the mission. And what I've learned over the years, Kevin, is that you can take that same philosophy and apply it to business. Right? And too many of us, I have found, make things overly complicated in business, number one. Number two, we tend to hire off of resumes and then can't figure out, why is this person not fitting the team, instead of doing some strengths assessments and personality assessments. I've heard you guys, with some of your guests in the past, talk about Myers-Briggs and some of these other personality assessments. I'm a big fan of those, because when you're building small teams, like a lot of our listeners here today, they may be solopreneurs or they may have small teams with them. It's really important that you share the same core values, and that, Kevin, your strengths are augmenting my weaknesses and my strengths are augmenting your weaknesses, so we're not duplicating efforts. And but you can do amazing, powerful things. And I guess finally, one of the superpowers that I have, I've got a couple, I guess, but one of them is I can take complex ideas and see through the BS and say, okay, here's what we really need to do. Here's what the core of our challenge is. Listen, I'm not the best marketer. I'm not the best finance guy. I'm not the best operations person. I'm not the best anything, except for I'm the best at leading the team that I want to build. And so I subordinate my ego for the success of the team. I try to be a cheerleader for those folks that I bring on the team. And the other thing is, I realize I have a superpower of seeing potential in people that they oftentimes don't see in themselves. And I think more leaders should have that. That when you see, I think we assume sometimes that the folks that are on our teams, or even other people in the business arena, that they don't need to hear from me how great they are. That barista doesn't need to hear, oh, thanks for serving this with a smile, or thanks for the effort you put into this. we don't know what's going on inside that person's head. And if you just get in the habit of complimenting other people, not disingenuous stuff, but generally when you see someone doing something great in that moment, it doesn't need to be world changing, life changing, but somebody's really put effort into it to recognize that. I have had, this is not an exaggeration, I've had people pull me aside and said, you have no idea how much I needed to hear that right now. I was ready to, you can fill in the blank.
Yeah.
Because I've had it happen over and over and over again. I was ready to quit. I was ready to walk out. I was ready to give up on my marriage. I was ready to unalive myself. So many things, because I just make it today for me, it's just part of my consciousness to cheer people on. And so that's probably the most powerful superpower that I've got.
Yeah, it's funny because I actually had this happen. I too try to do that. Like I really try to put effort in. And I was getting on a plane probably a month and a half ago. And when I got on the plane, and you know, this is their job, right? But they don't always do this in a way. So this woman, and she's probably mid-30s, I'm 50. And so there's a risk, right, in complimenting a young woman, you know, younger woman.
Yeah.
But she was one of these people that smile and engage with her whole face.
Yes.
Like her, and in particular, her eyes.
Yeah.
And as I got on the plane, it was something that struck me, and I said, hey, I just want to tell you that you have an amazing smile, and you smile with your whole face. And I really appreciate it.
Yep. Yep.
And her demeanor, even though she was happy already, her demeanor changed like immensely.
Yeah.
To where you could almost see like her ratchet up a notch that she really is put, and you don't know, maybe that was completely fake on her part, or that's a matter of her trying really hard.
Yeah.
But I could tell that really made a difference in her day.
Yeah. It's so funny. I had virtually the same exact experience, flying back from Atlanta on Sunday. The flight attendant there was just amazing. She was a little bit older than 30. But it's interesting about smiles. You know, studies have been done on smiles. Reflexively, you cannot smile at someone and the person, let me back up. If someone smiles at us, it is involuntary. We smile back. Studies have been done on this. If someone smiles at us and we don't smile back, it is a conscious decision on our part not to smile.
Interesting.
Isn't that fascinating? So I told this woman the same thing. Not the same thing. You don't smile with your whole face, but I said, boy, your smile really makes an impact. And then I said, by the way, I'm not coming on to you. Right. And so
Isn't that sad that we kind of have to caveat that, you know, but it is a weird time, right?
It is, but I think it lightens the mood. I mean, I've said it to younger people too. I was like, hey, I'm not coming on to you, but boy, what powerful energy you have. Thank you for showing up with that. And both of my kids have recognized it. Like I said, I'm a little more active in teaching my children, or my daughter now, than I think my parents were. It's a different time, right? But I've had both my kids. I remember the last time my son said that to me a few years ago. He was like, we were walking out of a grocery store, and he said, Dad, I really like it that you always try to make, people smile. Because we were talking about the woman who was checking us out at the grocery store. She was having a hard day. You could just tell the person in front of us was just grinding her down and can you hurry up kind of thing. And I could tell she was frustrated. And so I kind of tried to lighten the mood and make her laugh a little bit. And the funny thing is, as leaders, we are always being watched. Always being watched. And guess what? When you're being watched, you're being judged. Right? Like, I'd do it that way, or I wouldn't do it that way. Or boy, Larry's really acting like a jerk today, right?
Yeah.
So I think we need to keep that in mind, that people are watching, people are learning. And if one of our primary roles as a leader is to create more leaders, that's an important thing to remember.
Yeah, you and I think have similar styles in that. I'm always I tend to be pretty witty. And so I try to use that wit because especially people in the service industry, I've been there, I've run restaurants and all that. Sure. You just get in this routine where it's the lather, rinse, repeat every single customer. Yes. And I find if you can catch them off guard a little bit and throw some humor their way, that tends to derail the monotony of what they're doing, but also give them give them something to smile about, and then you can compliment them or whatever that happens to be, right? That's something that's so fun.
Well, it's so funny that we're talking to this audience. My son was a big car nut, and so he had a Honda Civic that we bought him, and he wanted to trick it out, and he put its spoiler on it, and we got his windows tinted, and the whole thing that you guys do here. And I remember he wanted me just to go get his windows tinted. Now, the kid was 16 and a half, going on 17 years old at the time. I said, no, I will do it with you. So let's sit down. We'll go through Yelp. We'll go through these reviews. All right. But you're going to call and make the appointment. I sat there with him. I coached him along. And so we pulled up to this. So he made some appointments to go around, to get his windows tinted. And so we walk in the door, and my son expects me to engage the person at the counter. And I just stood there and looked at him. And because obviously the people that were working there kept approaching me. Right. And so they said, well, we'll meet you up by your car, or our tech will meet you up by your car. And so we walk out, and the tech walks out and walks right up to me.
Of course.
And started talking. And thank goodness my son said, this is my car, and it was really good because this person immediately shifted gears, changed their tone a little bit, didn't talk down to him like, oh, you're just a kid. Right. But I thought it was really, frankly, the person was pretty direct and cold with me because I'm an adult. Let's just get it done.
Yeah.
But he was really cool. And then he adjusted his tone with my son, treated him with respect, knew this was probably the first time he was going through this. And guess what? We, on the spot, although we made 3 appointments, we booked with that guy right there. It's those little things in customer service or in client service. Treat somebody with dignity and respect. You can make a sale.
And that's a great connection that you can make, right? That's something that as a in customer service, and I think this is my superpower, is that ability to kind of do what that person did, which is shift gears to find the conduit between your son and them versus the dad. Right. Yeah. Like it's a different kind of conduit. It's a different kind of conversation. And that's one of the things I really try to do. Yeah. And I think as business owners, it makes such a difference in the way that you get that.
Yeah. Well, this guy just said, hey, is this your first car? But I said, yeah. And he goes, well, it's a Honda. So like, yeah, mine was whatever the souped up kind is, whatever it is. I'm not a car person. But he said, yeah, that was my first car as well. And they kind of found this common connection, like you're saying. Too many of us say we just go through the motions that road. I'm supposed to say this, I'm supposed to say that, and give me your credit card. And but he made it human.
Yeah, we used to have to go through that a lot because my wife she's a welder. She builds Jeep. She does off-road rallies and all this stuff. Yeah. So, she knows, like, we would take her Jeep somewhere, and we do probably 95% of the work on this thing. But if we have to go see someone, and they always want to talk to me. Which is ironic because it's like a turquoisey blue Jeep named Sugar High, which has Sugar High written on the side of it. She's a baker, just an awesome Jeep. Yeah. But I'm always like, people will compliment me on the Jeep or talk to me. I'm like, it's not mine. Talk to her, right? Like this is not. You're talking to the wrong person. I make sandwiches for this process. She's the one that's in charge of this whole thing.
That's awesome. That's good.
But it's a matter of like and that's a good sales technique, right? Is to be able to say, okay, who is it that I'm speaking to, and how can I get into their mind, heart, and psychology to be able to, not sell them, but to be able to have a conversation that ends in a transaction for the most part.
Yes. I think that if we switch this a little bit, instead of stop selling and we start serving them, that helps a lot in the process. And just help them make the decision. That's all. Just help them make the decision. There was something else I wanted to throw in there, but I've lost it. Maybe it'll come back to me. But.
Along those lines, as you're talking about like a solo entrepreneur, someone that, is trying, and the product doesn't really matter. The product or service doesn't really matter. No. Walk me through kind of how you teach those sales techniques. Not even, I hate to even use the word technique, right? Like strategies, or how, what is the best approach when people are trying? And for a lot of our listeners, we're talking about $2,000, $3,000, $5,000 services. You know, it's not a window. Window tint can maybe be $500, $700, but still, you know, those kind of things.
Yeah. Yeah. I am not the best sales trainer out there, but I can tell you this through, you know, obviously every business that I have, and I've got a bunch of them, sales is what makes the cash register ring, but it's marketing that brings the sales in. Yeah. Right. So I think, I don't care whether it's real estate or whatever you're doing, we have to make sure that we're treating people with dignity and respect. We already talked about that a little bit, right? I think that there are guys like Jeremy Miner out there and other folks who are great at overcoming sales objections that I would encourage people to go watch. But before you even do that, you've got to have rapport with the person. This is what I loved about this young man who came in, who was probably 24, the service tech who came out. He was closer to my son's age than to me. Yeah. He found this common connection with him, right? What I find oftentimes, particularly in the hotel business that I'm in, the salespeople don't ask enough questions. Really, sales folks should be problem solvers. Mm-hmm. What's the challenge you're having? What do you want to accomplish here? Right. And I first experienced this in San Francisco when we had a handful of hotels on a 1 or 2 block radius, right, in the same city. All different ownership groups, all different general managers, but we shared 1 or 2 common salespeople, right? And so what we learned to do is put all the hotels into basically a portfolio, go into a potential client and ask them, what are you looking for? Instead of trying to sell this hotel, this hotel, this hotel, or this hotel, or this service, this service, this service, or this service, what do you need? What are you hoping to accomplish here? And how can we get you there? I don't know anyone who pulls out their wallet gladly when the salesperson, is it Bose speakers? Is that the one where it was the picture of a person sitting in a lounge chair? And
he's just been blown away. Yeah,
exactly. I don't know anyone that buys from salespeople like that, but I see salespeople like that all the time. I get DMs on LinkedIn from salespeople like that all the time. How about just asking questions? How can we serve you? What are you looking for? We may not even be the right product or service for you, right? So again, I'm not the best sales trainer. I know how to hire sales trainers, salespeople, but build relationships. At the end of the day, we need to stop thinking about the people who are giving us money as customers. Customers are transactional, and think about them as clients. Right. Clients are relational. Yeah. A good client will make referrals for you. They'll come back. Oh, I got a tinting here. Now can I get a wrap? If people offer these same services, right? Customers are one-time transactional out the door and you never see them again. Even if you've only offering one service and you're only offering tinting, if you can make them a client, they'll refer you to someone else. It's a minor little switch, but I think it's a big one. Clients over customers every day.
100%. And then that's that lifetime customer value, right? It's the LTV, lifetime value of a client, a customer, whatever that is. But those are referrals and their next vehicle and all those.
That's right.
The relationship stuff. And that's where it really starts, because the transaction is not as hard. And that's why I hate that. I mean, and those guys that do it, they're really good at it. But this whole overcoming objections thing, which basically means, how can you talk someone into something that they may or may not actually want, right? Because there's always that feeling that you've been finagled or tricked or whatever. And, I've been around a lot of salespeople that are like that. And I'm always like, dude, I don't do that. Like, that's not my thing.
I'm with you. This is why I'm suggesting, if you ask questions and help them solve the problem, you may not even have the answer, but if you could help them solve the problem. In the hotel industry and other businesses that we've had to say, we're not right for you, but try them. Yeah. They might be really good. And by the way, I think a forgotten element of sales is the follow-up. How many people actually call after they've done the window tinting 3 to 5 days later and to say, hey, how's it working out? Everything working out for you? How you like that? How long does that call take? Even if you get a voicemail.
Yeah.
I mean,
not very long, 30, less than a minute, because most of them are going to send it to you, send it to their voicemail anyway. So that makes it even faster because you could just follow up and say, hey, it's Kevin. I know you got your things done. Appreciate you doing this elite package with us. I want to make sure that it's, it looks the way you want it. I want to make sure your car is as cool as we thought it was going to be, all of those things, right? It doesn't take that much effort to be able to do that.
It does not, but it builds the relationship, which leads to a client.
Yeah.
So simple little things.
100%. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, 85% of the people you're never going to hear from again, but those 15%, what's the most costly part of running a business? Client acquisition, usually, right?
Yeah.
There's 15% you don't need to go after again.
Yeah, and we like those free clients, which are the referrers, right?
Yeah,
like
those
ones that come back to us, or the clients that are referrals, and all. Like, we love those a lot more than the ones we have to pay a couple $100 for, through whatever ways.
Yeah.
I know your wheelhouse is leadership. Obviously, that's a huge one for you. Let's kind of break it down. If I'm a single operator, one of the struggles I think these guys and gals have is, all right, when do I hire? What's the next kind of step? And then, how do I hire? You're used to these huge teams, but I think the essence of hiring, the essence of leading a team, the essence of building a team is almost the same, no matter whether it's, one new hire or 1,000 employees, right? I mean, obviously there's some nuances within the management side of that and the hiring and team building and all that. But how does that look, and what kind of advice would you give to these people that are kind of in that situation?
Yeah, well, I would say that all of my businesses started out just where everyone else on this call is, with the one person doing more than they feel like they even can handle. And you do it anyway, and it's a season that you're in. I mean, unless you're highly funded, right, and you've got investors or you've got a big bank account, it's going to be scrappy in the beginning. What I like to do is identify three things, really. I call it MIC. It's 3 letters, so it's MIC, right? When I'm trying to hire people, I look beyond the resume. Yes, I look at the resume, but I try to look beyond the resume to find out, are these the type of people with the attitude, I get to get up and work with Kevin today. I get to get up and serve clients today. I get to get up and do this. They look at life as an opportunity, right? They're highly motivated that way. The second thing is integrity. Okay. I think most of us know what integrity is, right? The challenge is that motivation without integrity is dangerous. There's a lot of people sitting in jail, or should be in jail, I should say, that are highly motivated who lack integrity.
I think we call that politics, right? Is that what we call that?
We're thinking the same thing, brother. We have a firewire between our heads here. Yes, absolutely. Yes, and elsewhere, but mainly politics. Yes, but motivation without integrity is dangerous. So we want people to have lots of integrity, which means they're not going to give up the company secrets. It means they're not going to take your book of business and go someplace else, right? It means they're going to show up on time. As they're doing business, as they're putting tinting in the car and they see a $10 bill on the floor of the car, they're not going to slide that in their pocket, right?
Right.
That's integrity kind of stuff. And the third thing is capacity, the capacity to grow. And to me, that's the whole potential thing, right? Because it's so frustrating for me on my part to hire someone who's highly motivated, lots of integrity, and then because of my drive building the empire, we outgrow them. And it's not their fault because they're highly motivated. They got lots of integrity, but they just haven't been able to keep up.
Right.
And so I'm looking for people. It doesn't mean because you're 60 years old, you're at the end of your life cycle. I just mean that they're dedicated, they're lifelong learners, and they're trying to constantly grow and move closer to their fullest potential. So those three things I think are super key for any industry, any size of an organization. And then, as we had talked a little bit earlier, we touched on it, I would do some personality assessments, whether it's Myers-Briggs, the Colby A Index, Clifton Strengths Finders, to make sure that they're sitting on the right seat on the bus, as Jim Collins talks about, right? And by the way, if you've got time, really figure out, is there a personality match? Because you could hire someone who is highly motivated, full of integrity, got capacity, but they're a jerk.
Right.
That's not going to work either. So what's the point in this? It takes some work. to do this, to have good hires. And don't despair if you hire someone and it doesn't work, because that's just part of it. No, there are no perfect hires.
This episode is brought to you by Detailer's Roadmap. Hey, spoiler alert, that's us. We all know you need a kick-ass website in order to be successful with your business. The good news is, at Detailer's Roadmap, kick-ass websites, that's kind of what we do. With the latest performance, designs, and SEO strategies, Detailer's Roadmap is your one-stop shop to be successful on the web. And don't forget, we have the best support team in the industry. Whether you're an existing partner looking to improve your lead generation or you need a brand new website, Detailer's Roadmap is here to help you be successful on the web. So go to detailersroadmap.com/success and get started today. That's detailersroadmap.com/SUCCESS. Right.
There are people who can interview well, or people will lie when they give you a reference because they may have fired them, but they don't want any kind of legal lash. And so it's a risky business hiring people, but don't let that, prevent you from growing your business. So I do coaching and mentoring, as you know, as well. And we were on a group call, what's today? I guess it was on Tuesday. And one of my early coaching clients was on there, and she was out there facing the world, putting this big picture out there. She was speaking at events, and she was selling these high ticket, offers for her business, right? But I could see that she was hustling just a little too hard for the size of business that she was portraying. And so she finally called me one day, and thank goodness we've been friends for a few years. And she said, "I've got to be honest with you. I need your help." I said, "Well, if you want my help, you have to be honest with me. Really, you got to open up the books." And so she said, so I asked her, "How much revenue did you do in the trailing 12 months? And she said, "I'm embarrassed to tell you." I said, "What is it?" $41,000. Okay.
Wow.
But she's been out there hustling, maxed out credit cards, taking personal loans. She was on the edge. And so we put some systems in place, Kevin, and then got her to hire someone to get stuff off her plate. Right. So we went through these steps about doing personality tests, identifying what does she suck at. We can't hire good team members who are going to help us, Kevin, if we don't know what areas we're good at and what areas we suck at, right?
Yeah.
Because really we need to be in the end of the day, we're the chief brand officer, we're the chief revenue officer, right? And we can only create revenue, heighten the profile of our company if we're working in areas of our strengths. Because every minute we spend doing things that we're not good at, it's sucking our energy, it's sucking our lifeblood. And let's say that we spend, let's pick an example. Let's say that you spend 10 hours a week doing your accounting and bookkeeping, right? And you go through this math gyration. Oh my gosh, if I were to hire a bookkeeper at $50 an hour, I can't afford that. 10 hours a week times $50 an hour, I can't afford that, right? But what takes us 10 hours a week might take an expert an hour
right. Yep.
a week, right? And so we did that with this woman, and she got on the call to report that just 3 hours, not 3 hours, 3 years later, 4 years later, she's going to break the $2 million mark this year.
Wow. That's awesome.
This month for the trailing 12.
Yeah.
Right? Because why? Because she hired someone. Now she has 13 employees. Half of them are virtual assistants from the Philippines.
I have one of those.
Yeah. I think they're great, right? We've got a team of them as well. And the other half are here based in the U.S. She couldn't have done that had she not had the courage to say, yep, I'm going to have to take the risk. I'm going to have to hire someone. And by the way, over the last 4 years, some have worked and some haven't. But then we got to do the AAR afterwards, the after action review. Okay, I hired this person. They didn't work out. Where did we go wrong? What didn't we ask that we should have asked, right? Leadership is a contact sport. You've got to be in the arena to make it work.
Yeah.
The old school command and control style of leadership, do it because I said so, rarely works unless the bullets are coming down range.
Right.
When there has to be someone in charge, right? Or there's an emergency. If you're in a burning building, we're not going to do leadership by consensus.
We're not going to have a discussion about this, right?
Nope. What's our best course of action? Yeah, get the F out the building. That's the best course of action.
Yeah.
Okay. So I think that's what I would suggest to everyone. Kind of motivation, integrity, and capacity is really the most important thing, I think. Do some strengths assessments, identify what areas we're weak at, and find someone who's got those strengths. Take the risk and expect that you're probably going to fail a couple times when you're trying to hire someone.
Yeah. And, and setting that expectation up front almost with these new hires too, especially when you're small, because if you're just working with one other person, it's like, hey, we're feeling each other out here, right? Like this may end up not wanting to work with me, and I may not end up wanting you to work with me, right? Like that's, you don't want to set it up like we're going to fail, but like have that open and honest discussion that, we're kind of figuring this stuff out, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And that way the person feels invested. Right. And say, hey, as you're learning the ropes here, tell me what things you're really enjoying, what things you're not enjoying. Again, it's communication. I mean, I don't know if we've talked about this before or not, but when the pandemic hit, I was getting calls because I went very public. I'm generally a public person with, people can reach out to me and through social media, and I tend to usually respond, or, I'll go on these podcasts and people track me down. I was doing a lot of podcasts and TV stuff back then. But I was getting all these messages from people who are saying that their leaders have gone dark on them.
Wow.
They didn't see them. They didn't hear from them. And sadly, I think that's more common than not. There are a couple of folks I follow online now who they point out they receive emails and messages from folks on how bad their managers and leaders are. And they read these messages online. And so in some ways, I think it's probably more common than people like you and I are aware of, because we're constantly trying to improve. We're trying to grow. We're trying to learn, expand our horizons. We're reading books all the time. We're active learners. I'm not sure that most people who are leaders and managers are like that. My sense is that most people who moved into management and leadership positions were at one point a good technician.
Yeah.
And because they were a good technician, someone thought that they might be a good manager or a great leader. And oftentimes it's a completely different skill set than what they were doing before.
Yeah. We always contrast that with just because you're really good at something doesn't mean you're good at teaching it either.
That's right.
And leadership is a lot of teaching in that way.
Sure.
And so that's something we talk a lot about as well, because it's like, there are really qualified teachers and people and coaches and leadership and all that stuff, but there may not be, not everybody can do it.
Yeah, listen, there's a big difference between being a technician or a tactician and being a teacher. Totally different skill sets. Now, obviously, you can learn to be a good teacher, but I remember in martial arts, my twin brother, who is a world-class Hall of Fame martial artist, he's a great technician for sure, but he had said at a young age that he wanted to be the best possible teacher that he could possibly be and create more black belts. And he's out doing that. Right? Because for some reason, he and I are nutty. We're always thinking about legacy, right? How do our efforts outlast us on this earth, right? And so he knows how many black belts he's produced and what generation black belts they are. And so we need to think about that same thing. I still get a kick, I'll get a message from a team member or an employee that I had 20 years ago. And they'll send me a message and say, hey, I still remember that leadership lesson that you shared with me, or that I just got promoted. I got my first general manager's job, or I now own my own business. And that still resonates with me. That's about legacy.
Yeah. Right? Yeah. We talk about legacy a lot in those terms, right? Like it was funny because I'm getting ready to go so my daughter's dating a guy, and this guy was either going to be, this is the good one. Right? Like we've been through a series of not good ones. But like this guy on paper was either going to be a serial killer or like the guy we've been waiting for. Right. Yeah. Because he's that kind of guy. But I started thinking I read this book by Dennis Rainey probably 20 years ago called Interviewing Your Daughter's Dates. And, if you're listening, stay with me because this will make sense. But the premise of this is that as a dad who has daughters, I need to connect with this young man to help him be a better man in the context of dating my daughter.
Yes.
And I think what you're suggesting is the same thing in leadership, right? Like our job as leaders, business owners, entrepreneurs is that we want to help people be better and whatever they are in their lives have that success and however that's defined. But that was the contrast, right? It's contrasting between your just beating people in order to, beatings will continue until morale improves. Exactly. Right? Like that's you're a military guy. I'm sure that was a sign somewhere in the barracks. But like it's contrasting that between how can I lead in a way that shows not only I want to be a leader and build my business, but I want to build them up as people.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. Yeah. Well, it's interesting. I too, my daughter, introduced me to her boyfriend, not so long ago. It's over a year ago now. And they're quite serious now. And he had commented to me about that he knew from my daughter that I have very high expectations.
Yep. As you should. You wouldn't let somebody take your brand new car without at least having a conversation. Right. Why would you let them take your daughter?
That's right? Exactly. Yeah. Well, and it's the same way in our business, though. Everyone on the team needs to know that we're not expecting perfection, but we are expecting excellence. Right. Mm-hmm. And he got this. And, we built that type of relationship again, because we communicated. I hear this from friends of mine who don't like their daughter's boyfriends. So they don't talk to them. And I was like, well, it seems to me like if you don't like it, you need to talk more to them. Don't avoid the tough conversations. And so it wasn't so long ago that he approached me and he said, I know it'd be really important for you that before I ask Emily to marry me, that I ask you. Yeah. It's like, that blew me away, because who does that? Not nowadays. But because she did the homework, I did the homework on him, I felt comfortable with it, right? And I think it's the same way when we're building teams in business. People can't meet our expectations if they don't know what they are. They're certainly not going to know what they are if we're not communicating with them. But here's the thing, Kevin. Communication takes courage, particularly, difficult conversations. I hear it all the time from folks. I spoke at an entrepreneurial conference in Atlanta this past weekend. And so I did the keynote, and then I do these breakout sessions. We call them hot seats or jam sessions. And people would come up and they'd say, hey, here's the challenge I'm having with my team, or here's the challenge I'm having with my business partner. And it's like, well, have you spoken to them about it? No. Nope. Well, how would I do that? It's embarrassing or it's hard, or that's how you start the conversation. This is going to be an embarrassing conversation, or this is going to be a difficult conversation, and then lean into it. Yeah.
I actually just had one of those myself with my business partner. Yeah. Just going through, and it did take me a little while because I wanted to be able to formulate, you kind of have to run through the emotions of what you want to talk about. Your sometimes it's a loyalty issue. Sometimes it's like, what does this look like? And, all of that stuff. But those conversations have to happen.
They have to happen.
If someone was in your business, like changing the AC filters or whatever you would have someone do, right? And they're, taking their shirt off, for example. Like in the middle of your lobby, right? You're not going to be like, I would feel uncomfortable having that conversation with this guy that just took his shirt off in the middle of my lobby, right? Like you're going to have that conversation.
I would have no problem with that at all. Zero.
But like there are a lot of times when people, like, it's almost that severe. Like it's almost that obvious that we need to have these conversations. So I think that's great advice for people.
It is. Well, here's the thing. I think once you start having a few of the conversations, the small ones first, it gets easier to do it. I had a former, I won't even say, a former female team member that worked in our home office, and I had to send her home twice because she wore too revealing blouses, right?
Yep.
And there were people who were like afraid to have the conversation with her. It's like, sorry, this is too distracting. This is not the type of place. You look
right.
So sorry, you got to go change. And once you start having those conversations, they do indeed get easier. There's a book so one of the things that my business partner and I do in our coaching and mentoring thing, we run this book club called Leaders Are Readers Book Club, because I'm so charged up about learning. I want people to read more. But the book that we just did last month was called Comfort Crisis by Michael Easter. And it's a book about overcoming physical discomfort you work out, you go to the gym,
Yeah.
right? Think about, had you not gone into the gym the first time, you wouldn't be the fit guy that you are today. But boy, it was uncomfortable, right? And even today, it's probably
It was uncomfortable this morning, Larry. I'll tell you right now.
Right. But what's the payoff, right? And so then you can tap into these difficult times we've had in our life where it's been really uncomfortable to say, I made it through that. I can make it through this, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so we have to actively seek out uncomfortable situations in these conversations. In leadership, most of the uncomfortable things come down to communication. And so how do you do that? Like anyone who's listening, if you want to grow your business, you have to become a master storyteller. Transformational leaders are master storytellers. Facts tell, stories sell. If you want to inspire your team to greatness, you can give them data points all day long. It's not going to mean anything for them, but you have to be able to tell stories about the potential you see in them. You want to get new clients, you need to tell them about how great they're going to feel in this car when they got the new wrap on it or the new tint, right? So you have to be a master storyteller. And so you got to have command of the whatever your language is. The easiest way to do that is to read. Read and listen to other people, and then just have the courage to go out and make mistakes.
Yeah.
The first time someone put tinting on a car or put a wrap on a car, it probably was not flawless.
Right.
Right. It took practice. Right. And so we just have to get out and do it.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I want to be respectful of your time, but I'm curious what you think some of the biggest challenges that small businesses facing right now, right? Like you do nothing but deal with small, medium and large businesses all day long, every week. What are some of the things and kind of how are you advising them to kind of meet those head on and deal with those kind of challenges?
Yeah. Supply chain is a big one. Just actually having access, getting things at the same price that we did even 4 years ago. That's a big problem. And so on that one, too many people never raise their prices or they don't raise their prices enough. My sense is that you need to, if you've not raised your prices in the last year, and this is at any time, no matter whether you're in an inflationary time or not, raise your prices until 10% of your clients leave.
I like that.
Because if 10% leave, then guess what? You've got new margin to fill them in with new higher rated business. Access to capital is a big one. And so how do you get access to capital? Well, there's a variety of ways to do it, but getting lines of credit before you need them, I think, is an important thing. Going to your bank, your community bank, going to your credit union, and just trying to get something lined up, because when you need the money, it's very hard to get it. It's just
isn't that funny? You got to show you don't need it in order to get it.
Exactly. Yeah. So I would do that. The biggest challenge, though, I think that I'm hearing that folks are facing today is access to team members, to employees who really want to work. That is hard. I'm not sure I've got an easy answer on that. I think you're going to have to go through a lot of applicants to find the right people. But I'll tell you this, there's an adage, people don't quit their jobs, they quit their bosses. And so be the best damn boss that you can be. Listen to them, pay them the best that you can pay them. Have a good work culture. And by the way, pay and time off is not culture. All right. All right. Those are benefits of working at your organization, right? But the culture happens to be around the tone where people work, right? So be kind, help develop them. The State of the American Workforce survey done by Gallup organization shows that 67% of the American workforce is disengaged or actively disengaged. 67%.
That's a lot.
That's a lot. So how can you get more people engaged, right? Well, it's getting them working in their strengths. When people don't like to show up on time, or they come in and say, hey, is it payday, boss? Or thank God it's Friday, or ugh, it's Monday. It's because they're probably not working in their strengths either, right?
Yeah.
So there's that. So how do you find more team members? I would start going to trade schools and trying to find high-performing kids, young people, I shouldn't say kids, young adults who want to do this, who have some capacity. But we then need, as leaders, need to be willing to invest in them.
Right.
We can't just hire somebody, throw them into the deep end and expect that they're going to survive. I think that most of the workforces, they're done with those days. They are done. Like, you better, if you want me to do the job, you better invest in training, time, make sure I've got the tools and the resources to do my job effectively, or I'm going to go somewhere else. Because there are more opportunities today for young people to go out and make money that I certainly didn't have when I was a youngster. Yeah. Right. So I think it's those things mostly. Okay. But finding the right team is the most difficult. And all I can say is you're going to have to get out there and just slug it out.
Yeah, it's a contact sport, like you said, right? Yeah. I mean, the whole entrepreneurship, small business, everything. Yeah, it's not for the faint of heart. No, at all.
No, it's not. And well, that's the great thing. That's where the big reward comes from, right? Oftentimes the reward is not money, though. Yeah. Oftentimes the reward is meaning. That I'm making an impact in my life. The quote unquote freedom I get without someone breathing down my neck. Now, for those first few years, yes, it's going to be a difficult time. Growing your business, or if you go through an economic downturn, or there's a natural disaster in your area, yes, there will be those difficult times where, the battlefield changes, the landscape changes a little bit, right? But I think if we keep the end game in mind, and that is, I'm building legacy for me and my family. I don't have a boss breathing down my neck. I get to, chart my future, my own destiny. For me, that's what keeps me going every day. And by the way, I get to serve my team members in my community. I would never forget. Remember, we all have a sphere of influence, right? The number of people that we actually connect positively or negatively with our decision making, right? When you realize, oh my gosh, there's 5,000 people I connected with this year, or 80. I remember the first time I did it was 84,000 people. Wow. That was the first time I ever did this thing. Now, this is before I was doing TV and keynote speeches and that kind of thing. I thought, holy smokes, it's almost a little bit of a burden, but then you realize if you're up to the task, you can really make an impact on the world. You really can put your dent in the globe. And no matter what they're doing, they could be doing stuff like you right now. Anyone, whether you're a solopreneur, tinting windows, you could do your own podcast. You could just serve people first. How about that?
Yeah, that's great. I mean, and that's how we talk about, how you define success. And I've said on many times on this podcast alone, if you chase money and that's your main goal, you'll never make enough.
You're never going to make enough.
Right. So like that's because there are a lot of super rich people that are completely miserable. Yeah. And there are a lot of people that are, it's nice to be able to put food on the table and roof over your head. Of course, that's the basic necessities. Of course. But that really isn't what makes you, fulfilled.
Meaning does not come from money. It's just not there. It does make life easier. Yes. Like you were saying, for sure. Yeah. It takes a lot of the stress out of your life. But I think serving brings the most meaning.
I love it. Yeah. That's a great place to wrap this thing up. Hey, if people want to learn more about what you got going on, your coaching, your speaking, just connecting with you, how would they do that?
Funny story, by the way. I finally did, since we last spoke, secure my vanity URL that I've been trying to get for 40 years. Awesome. LarryBroughton.com is now my website. Okay. The guy who had it, who wanted me to buy it for $20,000, finally retired and then let it lapse. And the next day I got it for $8.99 or whatever it was. So LarryBroughton.com got, you can find all kinds of things there. I'm on most social media platforms at Larry Broughton.
Yeah. Yeah. And you have great content. I love following your content. There's always really inspirational stuff. Hey, I could not thank you enough for coming on board, giving us your time. And I appreciate you as always.
Yeah, you too. God bless you.
Thanks, buddy. Have a good day.